Welcome to the Death and Resurrection Doula podcast. I'm your host, Laurel Nicholson, a Christian end-of-life doula and theologian. Here we create space for hope-filled conversations about the realities of dying and the eternal life promised to us through Jesus Christ. Please note that some topics we discuss surrounding end-of-life experiences and related subjects may be sensitive for certain audience members. Listener discretion is kindly advised. In each episode, we invite you to explore what it means to live and die in the light of the resurrection, and how this hope shapes the way we approach end-of-life care in the many fields connected to this ministry. So brew a cup of tea or coffee if you prefer. Settle in and join our fellowship as we find peace in knowing that through Christ, death itself is transformed into a glorious new life. Hello, I'm Laurel Nicholson, creator and founder of the Death and Resurrection Doula Training Program and Community. Thank you for being here for my podcast. I have a very special guest today, my husband, Ed Nicholson. We have done 2 other podcasts together, but today is a topic that we haven't really discussed much on the previous conversation. So Ed is a music therapist for hospice, and I've asked him to join me to discuss a little bit more about what he does for work and the importance for dying people and their families to have music at the end of life. So thanks, Ed.
Hi, Laurel.
Tell us about what you do every day when you work for hospice as a music therapist.
I'm a music therapist and volunteer coordinator for Medi Hospice in Charlottesville, Virginia. And what I do is sing familiar songs and play my guitar to people at the end of their life. Music therapy, it comes in lots of different forms depending upon people. I was a curriculum director at a music school years ago. When I was curriculum director, I had to work with autistic kids. So I had to develop curriculum and work with those kids. That was a much different setting. It was within the confines of the school, and it was one-on-one with students. This is similar, but much different. Whereas in that setting, I did a lot of therapeutic things, rhythm, percussion I used to get the children interested in what I was doing and to kind of do basic music things with them, sometimes playing notes on the piano, sequences of notes, and getting those kids that they really enjoyed that kind of a thing. But with this, I've found, people are very uncomfortable or can be, and hospice care is really about making people the most comfortable they can be at the end of their life. And so for me, familiar music and songs and playing for people who enjoy music is pretty much where I come in. And so I'll either do one-on-one sessions. I have people that I do group. I go um every week I go to a dementia unit close by here in one of the facilities, and I work with those people. I sing for them for about an hour every week, and there's usually a crowd of people, like 30 to 40 dementia patients. And that's really cool because with dementia, people basically they're losing their memory, they're losing their cognitive ability to even speak and converse. And it's amazing the recall that people have with familiar songs. You sing a song like I'll Fly Away, or you sing a song like Country Road by John Denver, and people just instinctively remember the words. And it's kind of encouraging to see that because it helps bring joy and peace to people when they're at the end of their life.
That's a great explanation. And I want to share about the first time I ever was a part of music therapy for a woman who was dying. I was her end of life doula, and she was in the hospital. And a woman came in with a guitar on one day, and a different woman came in with a keyboard the next day. But the first time I encountered the phrase music therapy at end of life, I didn't really know what to expect. I was like, what are we going to do? But when the woman came in and sang, and apparently she had been there the day before I had arrived, and she said, "Oh, I bet you want me to play Amazing Grace again." And so she had already begun to develop a relationship with the
Mhm.
patient. And so as she began to sing, I watched the dying woman and her countenance changed. It was almost like she stepped into the kingdom of heaven just a little bit further. And I have just been a proponent of music therapy ever since, because dying is a moment where people are apprehensive, and to hear something familiar, particularly when you're Christian, and to hear a hymn or words that comfort the heart, it totally transforms the dying process
Mm.
from what I've seen.
Yeah.
Now, being married to you, I know your resume and really cool stories about other musical opportunities that you've had. And one of them was to play in Carnegie Hall some years ago, Carnegie Hall in New York, as well as play all around the United States and in other countries, and have your music available all around the world. You said to me how much you loved being at the bedside. It is fantastic as those opportunities have been. There is something really special about being at the bedside. Would you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I've been doing this for a couple months now, and I've connected with people. Some of my patients have transitioned to the next life and um, gone to glory. I'd say 90% of my patients are believers, solid Christians. And so it's kind of interesting the connection you make with those patients. A lot of times, in the therapeutic world, in the medical world, they say don't get attached to people, but I do make a connection with people, and I do find a lot of joy and satisfaction. Just a couple of weeks ago, I had a woman, she was just struggling, and part of my time is conversation with my patients too. And so she was just sharing, I just don't understand why God still has me here. And I looked at her and I said, well, you're here because I got to meet you. And I said, you have to remember this is a blessing for me just as much as it is a blessing for you. And relationships are a two-way street. And for me, I get joy and satisfaction in that. I have had a couple people that, I've been with them all the way up to the last days of their lives. There was one man in particular, I grew very fond of him and his wife, and used to go and do sessions. His wife made me a playlist when I first started going to him. She made a playlist of about 20 or 30 songs. So I tried to sing songs from that playlist and learn those songs. One of them was Willie Nelson's On the Road Again. He loved that song. That was his favorite song. So um, he would always light up when I started singing that. And then I was there the day before he passed, and I was singing at his bedside and with his son and daughter-in-law there, going through that transition with them. And his son just looked at me and he said, I'm so thankful that you came. This is so great for my dad. And he responded right away. When I got there, he was kind of in a semi-comatose state. But when I started singing, he started moaning, and I could tell that he knew that I was there. And I spoke to him just as if he was in the room. And I spoke to him as if it was a normal day and we were just doing another therapy session. It brings a lot of joy to them, and it brings a lot of joy to me too. And it is as satisfying as a Christian artist and musician. I've always looked at worship being that audience of one with God. And this is kind of like an audience of one. You have an experience with another person, and it's just you and them in the room. I always used to get really uncomfortable. It's actually easier to sing up on stage in front of a lot of people than it is to have someone sit there like one on one with you, scrutinizing what you're doing. But it does bring a lot of joy to my heart, and it does fill me a lot, that it brings them peace at the end of their lives.
So, as the music therapist, you're part of the hospice interdisciplinary team, and meetings for the hospice interdisciplinary team, you share about the experience that they have of receiving music therapy, and that becomes part of their care as much as a profound moment. And not everybody wants to have music therapy.
One woman I came into contact with, she had throat cancer, and I think it was the first time I had dealt with someone like that, and I always feel like I'm prepared to do my job. At that point in time, I'd never encountered somebody like that, and she thought I was coming there to do a normal therapy session where she would be participatory, and I was like, "Well, you don't have to sing." But at that point in time, she just couldn't deal with it because she had been a singer her whole life, and it was very painful for her to lose her voice. And so different circumstances call for different things. And at that point in time, I just had a conversation with her, a 25, 30-minute long conversation. We talked about her life a little bit. And, so sometimes it's not music, sometimes it's just conversation that people need and getting to know you. And I have been in situations where people are very reluctant, but usually once I pull my guitar out and I start singing, they change their mind really quickly.
I've heard you say that you've got song requests, so you don't have to know every song in order to be a music therapist. So you've come home, I've seen you, and you've pulled
Mhm.
out chord charts and practice songs and listen to it on your phone to make sure that you're familiar with the melody exactly, and you've learned songs for people. I've attended some of your sessions with you because I'm a volunteer, so that's opened up the opportunity for me to see you and see other people receive your music, and it's amazing. And I know from what you've shared with me that the hospice group you're with, this is the first time they've had a music therapist in the office here in Charlottesville. And they're amazed at how it's impacting the agency as a whole. So it's not just that patients and their families receive the benefit, but the whole hospice group is receiving a benefit.
It really, we joke around about it, but I've also become a marketing tool for them, for the account executives, because they put me in facilities to sing. It creates an opportunity where we're able to go and possibly get more clients that way. And so I'm in a lot of facilities now. I have regular stops in facilities where I go and sing in group settings. And that's helpful to the account I just last week, I got a big thank you from the team, the executive team. They were very thankful that I'm there and that I'm doing the job that I'm doing. Um, and I'm able to help out that way. I enjoy music, I enjoy performing, I enjoy playing. So for me, it's an added blessing to be able to do what I love to do on a daily basis and be able to get compensated for it. And there's a lot more to the job. The last question, I kind of answered a part of it, but I am a part of the team. I go to the IDG meetings. I fill out reports just like everybody else does. I am very involved in the care and in communications with the nurses and the doctors that are involved because a lot of times in those settings, volunteers and the music coordinators get information that the doctors and nurses can't quite get sometimes because the patients sometimes are intimidated by the doctors or the nurses and they won't give the information. But because I'm doing something that usually puts them in a good mood, they're a lot more communicative with me. A lot of my patients become very friendly with me. I'm able to talk to them and share with them about tough things that the decisions that they have to make. And, sometimes even kind of like motivating them to do things. Hey, have you ever tried to get out of bed? I know the team would love to see you at least sit up, and eat more or do something more, And so it helps out with that. And we have these big meetings. I have to be at them. We have one tomorrow where I'll be in a meeting for 3, 4 hours where we're talking about each patient. We're going through each patient. And I have a big roster of patients that I'll always have to take care of.
one of your patients is in the building with another patient. You were scheduled to see that other patient. And so as a volunteer, I went with you and you took me into his room to visit with him while you were singing to someone else. And he wasn't scheduled for you that day. And he was a little bit confused because he thought
I remember that.
pretty much told me he way more enjoyed your time
Yeah,
than my time
yeah,
because he really didn't want to talk. Just sit there and talk.
yeah,
Music is a conversational piece, right? You
yeah.
can talk about music. And I said to him, "Do you have any children? What did you do for work?" And he was not into it. And he said, "When is Ed coming back?" I
Yeah.
said, "Well, it's not
He wanted to
scheduled for
know
today."
that I was gonna be there. Yeah, it's funny, because that's what people want. They want the music. It kinda brings them some peace. I have one woman, she's in a home care facility, in a private home care facility, and every time I go to see her, she invites her friends. She loves the group setting for her, and she said to me one day, it was pretty amazing. She said, "When you're here and you're singing, I breathe easier." And she's on oxygen. I was like, "Wow, I gotta put that in my report." And when I was filling out my report, I put that in there because music nurtures the soul. It doesn't matter what kind of music it is, it nurtures the soul. People connect with it and they feel it brings them peace that they need at that point in time in their lives.
I love it. Another thing I love is how you've told me you understand more about my work now and how meaningful it is for patients and families to have someone come in alongside them at all different capacities of service. And so your role with music is ultimately important. It could be that someone is actively dying in that transition and your voice and the words of the hymns are still important. So it doesn't have to be that the patient's awake and ready for you. It could be a ministry to the family as much as ministering to the dying person. So
Mm,
the opportunities are endless. You've mentioned dementia. We've talked about just the physical response of easier breathing. We've talked about the being able to open up conversations with people that might be afraid to share it with the doctor or the nurse. We've talked about the importance of music, even in the active transition, and overall, just your presence, bringing the Spirit of Christ with you where you go, is an opportunity that a lot of people won't have in their life. And you shared with me early on when you started the job and you were learning so many new things that there is a huge percentage of people that are eligible for hospice that don't take its services.
no. No, I think it's 90% of people who are eligible for hospice don't take advantage of it. I think so many people are afraid of it. It's a sign of the end of life, but there's so many factors involved in getting into hospice and qualifying for it. It originally was set up to help people, the government regulations, and now we see fraud. Our Medi Hospice has experienced some backlash from the whole fraud thing. That's the problem. Good hospice organizations end up getting scrutinized because of all the fraud that's taken place in our country, because the government organizations obviously have to protect themselves from any kind of, misdiagnosis or whatever it is. But, I think that's why it's great when you have a team like we do at Medi that works together. We're constantly communicating. We communicate daily. I get up to date minute through our messaging portal that we use that's private. It doesn't get shared with anybody, and we're able to message each other. I'm able to message the nurses directly. I find out information if a patient's uncomfortable. I get to find that out. But going back to the spiritual aspect of it, I think that was one of the things I noticed when I was onboarded. and this is not a criticism, younger guy that was onboarding me. He is a true music therapist, went to college for it. I came out of professional music, did it for years. And so this is kind of like a different thing for me. But I think some music therapists get so wrapped up in the therapy side of it. I know when I did curriculum at the school, the same thing with the teachers. I used to say, you're so wrapped up in the curriculum. Don't get wrapped up in the curriculum. You got to make this fun for people, and you got to find that thing that connects to their soul that's going to motivate them to want to learn music. And in this case, you're going to want to find that one thing that connects with them. And like I said, at the end of your life, you are questioning your mortality. And for me, I know where I'm going. I know my future, and I know that my future holds the glory of God. And so I try to bring that into every situation that I'm in, even though with some people, they don't want to hear it, they don't want to talk about it, but I still bring that. I have patients of mine that I play worship tunes that I play on Sunday morning for them, and they're like, "Oh, that's a beautiful song." And they're not believers, but I always think, what can God do in this situation? Lord, use me in this situation to be salt and light. And so that's really what I look at when I am bedside with a patient, is how can I be salt and light in this situation? Because I remember my father wrote a journal for the last 6 months of his life, and he wrote in there, I believe that we're going to see a lot of foxhole Christians. We're going to see people in heaven that we never thought would be there. There are a lot of people that when they're in that dying state, they just cry out to God, God, I need you. And if you're there and you're real, would you save me? And that's really the state of salvation. That's coming to grace, the grace of Christ. I believe that's true. My job helps people get to a point of reconciliation with their humanness. That's
Mm.
it's important.
It's a humbling job as a doula, as a music therapist, to be called to the bedside. The Lord's also giving you opportunities to sing in 2 churches on Sundays. And I never even really thought about that. But what we sing on Sunday mornings can be brought to unbelievers. So you're bringing the church into the home of someone who isn't yet
Yeah,
believing.
yeah, absolutely. I'm watching um, people in a transitionary period of their life. And so to me, to bring the love of Christ, to bring the joy of Christ, just like what you do for people, to care for people at the end of their lives in a selfless way, is really what you want to do. That's the greatest servanthood that we could have, to do something like that for people.
Close us out by sharing favorite request. I know you sing "You Are My Sunshine," which is not a song you've sung
No,
a
I
lot
think,
in your life.
yeah, there are, it depends. It changes a lot. There's Go Rest High on the Mountain by Vince Gill. That is a big one. Um,
The Goodness of God.
The Goodness of God. Yeah. People love that song. Um, and then there's What a Wonderful World. People in this region, they love hearing Country Road. They know every single lyric to it. You know what I mean? That's the song of the Shenandoah Valley. So people can relate to it. That was inspired by this beautiful place that we live in. So, for them, that was a big one. But I think that the spiritual songs, one of the best ones is probably Blessed Assurance. That song really resonates. It meets with people. Here's a woman who suffered most of her life. Fanny was deaf and blind, and she wrote these wonderful hymns. And she wrote them, the words to that song. We found that out a couple years ago when we went to Ocean Grove. That's where that song was written. It's a great thing. It's a great thing to serve people.
It is. I've enjoyed talking about it, even though I know about it from our conversations on a regular basis. I've enjoyed having this conversation, recording it. I'm going to distribute it. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I
And I
recommend
can
that.
call you sweetheart.
Right. I recommend to those who are in end of life care, whether you're an end of life doula or working in hospice, or you're a family member, a caregiver, inquire about music therapy for patients. It'll make a big difference. Awesome. Thank you, Ed. Thank you for joining me for today's conversation on the Death and Resurrection Doula podcast. If this discussion encouraged you, I invite you to share the episode with a friend, subscribe, and visit deathandresurrectiondoula.com to learn more about our end-of-life doula training programs as well as our upcoming gatherings. Remember that Christ overcame death on the cross, and the promise of eternal life is already ours. Until next time, may the grace and peace of Jesus fill your heart with the peace that passes all understanding.